I'm at the Japanese ambassador's residence in London. I'm about to prepare and cook a banquet for some of his Japanese and British guests. I've got to get it right, and yet I've had no experience of cooking Japanese food before, apart from a bit of tempura. So to say I'm apprehensive is a bit of an understatement, and the only thing that's going through my mind at the moment is a fine kettle of fish I've got myself into this time.
As a seafood cook, I'm constantly asked what I think of food in Japan, to which I reply, I'm sorry, but I've never been. Well, they humph. Surely it's like teaching French without having been to France. You must go. So, to cut a long story short, I'm here in Tokyo to find out the basics of Japanese cuisine. This will, I hope, help me create a banquet fit for their ambassador in London and all his sophisticated guests, where I hope nation shall speak food unto nation. The whole thing started rather innocently with a day's mackerel fishing off Padstow. I set out to make sushi for a group of holiday makers who'd never tried it before.
Hey! Damn thing!
And I thought that no one could get fresher mackerel than this. However, when the Japanese ambassador saw what I was doing on the television, he told a friend of mine, in no uncertain terms I may add, that Rick Stein may know how to grill a Dover sole, but he doesn't know much about sushi.
So what do you think?
Really nice, lovely.
I was just thinking this is about 30 quid's worth of sushi here, all from one mackerel. Cost 5p. Get it on the restaurant straight away.
And that's how this banquet idea started. I met Ambassador Nogami a couple of times and soon realised he was a true gourmet and suggested the idea of going to Japan and coming back and cooking dinner for him and his friends.
Ambassador, what do you think I should be looking out for in Japanese cuisine?
Well, I think if you could sort of grasp what lies behind Japanese food. The Japanese food is based on seasonality, and we appreciate the quality of produce, how freshness of produce, and also our food is always very much closely linked to the seasonal changes.
This idea of cooking the banquet, I know very little about Japanese cooking. Do you think I'm mad?
No, not at all. I don't think that the British audience would like to see you cooking, exactly like a Japanese do, but the spirit of Japanese cooking.
Cheers.
And so it was that I found myself in the world of Bill Murray in that lovely film Lost in Translation. This is where ritual and custom and extreme politeness are the order of the day.
Good evening. Welcome to Japan, Tokyo, and Royal Park Hotel.
Right from the start, I had an inkling that I was being made a fuss of. I'm sure they think I'm terribly important, more than a TV cook and restaurateur from Cornwall. But hey, what they don't know won't hurt me. I suppose there weren't any sultans or princes staying this week.
Good Lord.
There is an old Japanese saying that I've just thought of that says, the bigger the room,
Wow.
the less likely you are to find all the light switches when you turn in. And there's always one that you left on.
Fantastic. Is that the bedroom there? Blimey. Didn't expect anything like this. Well, thank you. This is unbelievable. Obviously, the ambassador's pulled a few strings.
Although it was late and very wet, I was determined to explore the city. A friend of mine, an old Tokyo hand, said, don't bother going to all the upmarket restaurants. And even the ambassador said I should try the little restaurants in the business quarter, which specialise in different dishes. These are barbecued chicken intestines, which taste better than they sound. And this is deep-fried breaded pork in a dipping sauce and a bit of English mustard. Even in the pouring rain, there's a great atmosphere around here. Little groups of office workers having a few pints before the long train ride out to the suburbs.
Oh, this is nice. Look at that Kobe beef there, all done in sort of shiny plastic. I mean, it's such a much better idea than just having pictures of the food. And, there's some sashimi. This is eminently collectible, this stuff. It's so bright and cheerful. Oh, and there's some noodles with seafood in a big bowl. I've just got to take these all back to my cottage and start a collection. I was looking out of my hotel room on the 18th floor earlier on. It just looked like big high-rise office blocks and massive city. But I got down on the street and I sort of realised it's not like that at all. There's a whole honeycomb of little streets leading off everywhere. And I found this place, it's a railway arch. I can hear the trains going above all the time. And it's so sort of funky. I mean, there's lots of people here in sort of city suits. So, I mean, it's not like down market, but it just looks so sort of informal. And the food is excellent. And the beer, Japanese beer, is a revelation. I had a bit of a problem trying to come to an idea of what I would choose to eat. But I was just having a look at the menu, and I saw a little pig, a little chicken, and some kebabs. So I just pointed to them, and then I just said pickles, because I know you eat pickles with everything. And it's a fantastic meal. I'm really enjoying it. It's really good quality, and I just love the buzz.
It's one of those places that reminds me of Spanish tapas bars. You have a little plate of mussels and a glass of sherry and move on to the next little bar. But I'm running out of time because in a few hours, the biggest fish market in the world, called Tsukiji, opens for business. And business here means a turnover of $20 million of fish every day. It was here that I met up with Taka, who became my indispensable guide.
First, we're going to do the frozen tuna before the beating starts. If I may.
Wow. You know that film, The Alien? I always thought it had a bit of a sort of seafood imagery in it. And do you know the bottom of the spaceship in that film with all the pods with the eggs in it and that sort of fog hanging? Well, that's where they got it from. But also, I think it looks a bit like a sort of Second World War aircraft hangar full of bombs ready to go on the Lancaster. Now, just looking at some of these guys here, they're so skillful with the axe. And what they're doing is just chopping a little bit out of the tail to tell the quality of the tuna. And somebody will come along a bit later and just test the tuna to see how much fat is in the flesh and how good the quality of the fat is. So this is the fresh tuna room or hall, I suppose you could call it, just prior to the auction. Just beautiful fish here. It's a really important time because what they're checking here is the quality of the tuna, and what they're looking for is the marbling in the tuna and the colour, and the more vibrant and intense the red, the fresher it is. And I was just thinking about it, talking about marbling. It's a bit like beef, you know. I think tuna really is like roast beef to us. Tuna is to the Japanese. And when you think that they live on fish, the more I talk to them, it's fish and rice. If this ran out, I think it'd be all over for them.
Most of the money that passes through this market is from the tuna sales, and these fish come from all over the world: New Zealand, Chile, Africa, even the Mediterranean. There's nowhere the tuna boats won't go. This auction, I think, sums up their fanatic zeal and a voracious appetite for this magnificent fish. Because the tuna's so expensive, it goes to specialists who know how to prepare it. They leave nothing to waste before it's shipped out to restaurants and sushi bars all over Japan. I've seen filleting all over the world, but this man is a master. He reminds me of those samurai warriors from the films of Akira Kurosawa, that intense concentration where the man is totally at one with the sword.
When I was little, the fishmonger in Padstow, called Mrs. Soper, used to say, "You make your money from the sharpness of your knife." This fish cost £1,000,000 yen. That's £5,000. You certainly need a sharp knife to get your money out of that. I've just found out that this tuna, which is £5,000, by Christmas will be as much as 20 to 25,000. And the most expensive tuna on the market, the Christmas market, could be as much as £50,000.
It's not even 8 o'clock yet, but it feels like lunchtime. And ever since I arrived in Japan, I've yearned for really fresh sushi. And it doesn't come any fresher than this. A sushi bar right in the fish market. I couldn't wait to try the tuna and delicate slivers of squid and red bream straight from the market with grated wasabi root, and it's served with vinegared rice. Those that know such things say that sushi's going to take over the world in the same way that the pizza and hamburger did. Well, it better hurry up before the fish runs out. There are many types of sushi. This is called maki, vinegared rice wrapped in dried seaweed. It's one of those dishes that has great theatre attached to it, rather like making the perfect pizza disc or flambeing a crepe Suzette at the table. Even the way it's presented on the plate means something. This sushi is vastly different from the supermarket version back at home, where they use mainly cooked or smoked fish for a longer shelf life, presumably. This is the bee's knees.
Would you just ask him how long it takes him it takes a sushi master to train?
一人前の寿司職人になるのはどれぐらいかかるものですか？
長ければ10年はかかりますね。私の場合は4日前までタクシーの運転手やってましたから。
Well, it takes about 10 years for normal people, but I was actually a taxi driver until 4 days ago myself.
What?
これは冗談です。
It's a joke, sorry.
Right.
You there?
10 years.
10 years.
Amazing.
Well, now that we've been to the Tsukiji market and we have eaten this fresh sushi, do you think you'll be making sushi at the banquet?
Simple answer, no. I mean, I haven't got 10 years to spare. It's next month we're doing it. But the main reason for no is I think sushi's really a meal in itself with all that rice. I think it'd be too filling. I think I'd go for sashimi. No question, I will go for sashimi. I've just got to learn how to cut it properly.
Well, it was a beautiful technique we saw today.
We certainly did.
Doesn't matter what country you're in, this is the way to soak up the nuances of a nation's food. And it really helps to discover that Taka is a serious foodie.
I just noticed this, and I've just asked, but it's actually wasabi, or wasabi, which is the green horseradish that everybody has with sashimi and sushi. I never knew what it looked like before, but of course it's a horseradish root just like ours.
This is a dried fillet of bonito, a type of tuna, been planed into those very fine shavings. For dashi, the essential stock here. The Japanese are crazy about pickles. Here, there's celery, cucumber, and salty aubergines.
Well, this is a sushi knife, and it's quite rigid. It's incredibly sharp, of course. But what's interesting is it's straight, flat on one side, and curved on the other.
So what it does is when this fruit knife cuts, it actually cuts like this, but this part remains, which means you get the freshness of the ingredients
Oh,
maintained.
I see. I totally get that. I mean, that's what I mean about Japanese attention to detail. When you slice into a fillet, if you've got the straight side, it just cuts through those cells and doesn't damage any of the others, and it pushes the bit you've cut away, so you cause minimum damage and therefore maximum freshness.
Quite a large part of the market is devoted to live fish. They've been kept in pools on board the fishing boats, and they're sold at a premium because of the Japanese obsession with freshness.
Whenever I come here, it's almost like coming to a Disneyland of seafood. Literally, there's so much variety that, it's just mind-boggling to me.
I like that. Disneyland of seafood. Yeah,
We're saying it, I guess.
I might use that.
If I was doing the banquet over here, I'd have this boiled octopus for sure. And these sea squirts, you cut them open, they're a real bite of the sea. I've got to have prawns somewhere, preferably live tiger prawns. But maybe I'll use our langoustine. I'm also thinking about clams. These are blood clams. They might be good in the sashimi, but I'd use our carpet shells. These look like our whelks back at home, but apparently they're much more tender. They call them babylons here. This reminds me of a samurai warrior, an Arctic snow crab. Big money, but perfect for the banquet. Maybe I'll use our local spider crabs. Anyway, this market is a great source of inspiration to create a menu. I really think it helps to have a serious appetite when you do this type of window shopping. It gets the creative juices flowing. But now it's time for lunch.
Well, just tell me about the sort of basics of Japanese cooking then. I mean, what do I need to know?
I think typically a Japanese food or Japanese cuisine, when we eat, we have about 5 different flavors, which was the saltness, the sweetness, the sourness, the bitterness, and the hot, I guess the heat. And what we do is we try to mix all sorts of things that we make with these flavors and enjoy those flavors. But it's also important to remember that it's actually the ingredient that's the star. The ingredient is enhanced by these flavors, not killed by it. So I think that's what we keep in mind.
This is a typical businessman's restaurant in the heart of Tokyo, specializing in sashimi, with fish straight from the pool. The food is prepared very quickly because these office workers eat and run. There are so many things to know about Japanese cuisine. Colors, for instance. Their favorites are white, yellow, black, green, and red in food. This is a picture. Sashimi made with sea snail, red bream, tuna, and prawns. I don't think I'll be doing anything quite this elaborate at the banquet.
I've only been here for 36 hours. I must say, when I arrived, I was utterly daunted. Talk about lost in translation. You arrive in Tokyo and it just seems like another planet almost. I mean, everything about life in Japan is about precision, about, you know, really taking attention to detail. One of the things I noticed, we were walking through a whole load of restaurants with kitchens, everything's so tiny. And I was just thinking, it's actually very good for human beings to have to think in a confined space. It's actually easier, I think. When you've got massive space, you don't know where you're going. But when everything's small, which it is in Japan, big population, not enough room, people rise to the occasion. I think that's what's so impressive about the place, that it's attention to detail.
And the detail is never more important than in social etiquette. Setsuko Yamamoto teaches the art to businessmen.
Setsuko, how do I greet you then?
Yes, first you greet is a little bit bow. And the hand goes like this. Hajimemashite.
Hajimemashite.
Nice meeting you.
Right.
And slowly up the head.
Slowly up the head.
Then it's nice smiling.
Nice smiling.
Yes. Then it's please take a seat.
Please take a seat.
Yes.
Down. Oh, we kneel. Okay. So just tell me what the worst mistakes of etiquette Westerners can make, really.
Yes, and when you take off shoes,
yeah.
Yes, first you have to take off shoes, but sometimes you can get the slippers, but slippers not allowed to walk on tatami room.
It's got to be bare,
on the bare feet,
yeah.
And then also when you eat, and the chopstick, and so you have to break it, then you eat, then every time chopstick you have to put on the side.
Right.
Not vertical, horizontal.
Okay,
yes.
horizontal.
Yeah, horizontal. Yes, horizontal.
And what about drinking?
Drinking is always kanpai.
Right.
Then it's
kanpai.
Yes, cheers. Yes, kanpai means cheers.
Yeah.
And always holding nice way. Then to bring to you with respectfully.
And always double-handed.
Yeah. Then it's nicely. That means it's respect.
It's all about respect.
Yes, respect. That's it.
And as I'm beginning to realize, in Japan, respect is the key word. Without it, nothing works. And it goes right back into the kitchen. Andy Cook has been a top chef in Tokyo for the past 2 years and runs a restaurant for Gordon Ramsay, which is producing Western food for the Japanese palate. I thought if anyone could help me understand the preferences of the Japanese and give some very useful tips for this banquet, then it would be him.
I think, first of all, the key thing for you is fresh. You really need to be getting the best, freshest fish you can possible. Season, you really need to concentrate on season. The Japanese are very passionate about being in touch with nature and being in touch with what's going on around them. You've got things like the kaiseki menu, which is the monster 18-course menu. And each course will be something different. You'll have your sashimi, you'll have your sushi, you'll have your grilled dish, you'll have your soup, you'll have your meat, you'll have your pickles, and then you may at the end, very end, you'll have some kind of sweet dessert made from beans. But yeah, you need to have you're going to need to have a nice soup, something that's fresh, something that's focusing on what's in season. Like I said, sashimi traditionally is things like the white fish. So you're looking at a nice bass. You're looking at things like maybe some baby rouge or sea bream. Sea bream's interesting because the Japanese love anything that's red and white. Anything that represents the Japanese flag, the colours on the Japanese flag, they absolutely adore.
Wonderful.
Lobster, fantastic. Sea bream, fantastic. I mean, sea bream over here, we buy at a very high price and we sell at a very high price. Don't be scared about it being too complicated. I think you're not going to fail to impress the guy.
You reckon?
I reckon you'll be all right.
Well, that was it. I was just going to say, I mean, do you think I'm bonkers?
Probably are, yes, but I think you'll be all right. With that advice, I think you'll be all right.
I like to feel I've become a bit of a connoisseur of street food over the years that I've been travelling around everywhere, but this just beats it all. I mean, where could you get a dish of first quality tuna like this, semi-fat tuna, with your own little tea supply, bowl of miso soup? I mean, it's just perfect.
The variety is endless and it's really cheap and seriously fresh because they all specialise in one thing or another. People come to this one for tempura, beautiful prawns in a light batter. And then this man makes what I'm told is an old Tokyo dish, like an omelette full of chili, coriander, mirin and pork. And he doesn't let the eggs set. It's poured over boiled rice and it's all cooked individually. But best of all, I found this little gem that has cooked the same dish for generations.
This is a very local restaurant. They only serve one dish. It's called Fukagawa Dom. It's also the name of the area because the dish was so typical of the area. It's actually clams and rice served with miso soup, of course. And the clams came out of the river, so it was the obvious dish to serve around here. It just reminds me a bit of sort of eel pie and mash. You know, those restaurants that were all around the East End of London near the Thames and Eel Pie Island. Most of them sadly have died out now, but there's still one or two left there, and this is very sort of similar, really. And they sort of largely serve older people, but it's really good that there's still one or two of these restaurants around, and I have to say this is quite delicious. If you find a good eel pie and mash shop, it's good, but this is particularly good.
I think like many dishes of this type, this is all to do with the quality of the stock. Now, my taxi driver took us here because this is where he has his lunch. But now we go from one end of the culinary spectrum to the other, a restaurant that has been in the same family for 16 generations. A town northwest of Tokyo, Kanazawa. I've come here to experience a full-on banquet given in my honour by the ex-Prime Minister of Japan, Yoshiro Mori. The ambassador in London was extremely keen for me to meet his friend and also to sample some of the best food Japan has to offer. I felt a bit out of my depth and a bit clumsy, and I was constantly thinking of the do's and don'ts of chopstick etiquette. And of course I really wanted to know what sort of fish it was that I was eating. It came as a bit of a relief when Mr. Mori suggested we take our coats off.
So it's about relaxing and enjoying the food.
Under domes of ice was the prettiest display of sashimi I've ever set eyes on. I'm never going to match this. I've never seen anything like it. This was made up of tuna, prawns and sea bream, and it's put together like a work of art. It made me wonder how many days a week Mr. Mori would eat fish.
何回魚介類をお食べになりますか？
僕は毎日食べます。
Every day, actually.
Every day?
Every day, 7 days a week.
And how often meat then?
じゃあお肉の方は
肉はできるだけ食べないようにして。
I try not to eat as much meat,
で
actually.
も好きですよ。
I like meat.
Would you ask him if he likes any British dishes?
イギリス料理で何かお好きなものってありますか？
イギリス料理ってどうなんだろう。
What sort of cuisines are there in England?
I think that says quite a lot, really. The roast beef of Old England is still a bit of a mystery in Japan, and judging by what we're eating tonight, it will remain so until they run out of
何
fish.
て言うんでしょうか？よくジョイントとかですね。ローストビーフとか、ロースト系のもの。
ローストビーフはいいですね。
Roast beef, I love. I really do.
あれはこうますます。
But obviously that kind of does build up on my body, so I try not to eat as much. Actually keep on that fishing.
There were 9 courses, all complementing each other. And chefs the world over want to know how their food is being received at the table. Well, it's oishi. That's delicious over here. And this is a little boat formed out of kelp, which they call konbu. And it's filled with slices of abalone, red snapper and leeks, along with the ever-present shredded daikon. The konbu has a taste of the sea itself, but it also has other prized properties.
Apparently, the people of Okinawa, which is the island at the southernmost part of Japan, on the way to Taiwan, live longer than anybody else in Japan. And people in Japan live longer than virtually anybody else anyway, because they eat so much fish. But they eat 10 times more kombu than anyone else in Japan and live longer. And also, it's very good for slimming. I wish I could eat this.
何はよく昆布食べます。
Japanese eat kelps quite often.
で、昆布を食べる
And when
と
we eat kelp,
髪の毛
it
が
actually helps to grow your hair.
黒くいつま
Keep
で
your hair nice and colorful.
で、私は70 歳。
And I'm going to be 70 next year.
70?
Yes, yes, 70.
I thought he was younger
私よ
than
りちょっ
me.
とお若いのかなというふうにお見受けしたんですけども。
が、松本、彼は71。ね、髪の毛多いでしょ。
Look at our hair.
ね、昆布食べて。
It's the kelp.
ね。
Was it nice? Did you like it?
Well, I would like to say it was completely a revelation to me. I don't think if it wasn't for this, I would never have tasted food like that. I don't believe you could go to a Japanese restaurant anywhere outside Japan and eat food like that. I mean, it's better than the top 3-star French food. For me, it's the perfect food. Simple, delicate, incredibly complex in the kitchen, and my thanks to the chefs, but so effortless here. It's I just think it's what Japanese, to me, it's sort of what Japanese culture is all about. There's sort of seeming simplicity, but behind it so much complexity.
Thank you very much, 本当に。
What I want to do next is to get to grips with the essential pillars, if you like, of Japanese cuisine, the ingredients and the flavours that keep recurring in each meal I have. If it was Italy, well, pasta, tomatoes and basil. Germany, sauerkraut, sausages and ham. Here, well, it's a little bit more complicated than that.
Okay, it's just going to get a bag.
Thank you, Lord. Well, I've only been here for just under a week, but I think I've got together the essentials I'm going to need for the banquet. That's the main flavouring ingredients in everything I'm going to be doing. We start, of course, with soy sauce. I was talking to a soy maker the other day who said it's as important as water in Japanese cooking. I think that's absolutely right. And next is mirin. Now, that's the main sweetener in all Japanese cooking, and sweetness is very important. Next, sake. Well, this ain't a great sake, it's just cooking sake. But how they use it is with soy to cut down the strength of soy. So you always start with soy and sake to vary the intensity of the sauce. Japanese rice wine vinegar. Pickles are so important in Japanese cooking with salt, the essence of a good pickle. The one herb I picked out here, or leaf, is shiso, or perilla as we call it in England. Such a distinctive flavour. Bonito flakes. Dashi is the basic stock that all soups come from. And with bonito flake, the classic dashi is made with kombu, which is kelp, which is seaweed. And kombu, again, is used in pickling, particularly pickling fish. I could, of course, not fail to mention wasabi. And for the Japanese writing, it's that way up. Wasabi is that really hot green horseradish. They like to do the whole spectrum of all the flavours and all the tastes. So that is very, very important. And lastly, and by no means least, the mighty daikon. Really strong radish gives you the hot flavour in a lot of Japanese cooking. The thing that's worrying me is that my food is quite simple, just relying on very simple presentations. Now, the Japanese is simple, but there's a lot of work goes in behind the scenes there, and that's where I'm going to find it difficult, because I'm a bit of a sort of, I wouldn't say a sort of basic cook, but I like things just very straight down the middle. I'm going to have to get into that whole idea of making things look simple when in fact they're not.
I've got as much information as I could cope with. I've learnt a lot, and all I can do now is to go back home and do it, and hope that Ambassador Nagami is a kind and forgiving man. Well, this is my menu for tonight. First, sardines, a Mediterranean dish, but it looks Japanese. Next, clear soup with langoustines and shiitake mushroom. Then, sashimi, the ultimate Japanese dish, and I had to have the ice igloo. To follow, a tempura of lobster, red mullet, and for that seasonal touch, chanterelle mushrooms. Afterwards, a savoury egg custard called shawanmushi, and that's made with spider crabs. This is grilled bass with porcini mushroom and a spear of ginger shoot. No meal is complete without miso soup, and of course those lovely pickles and a bowl of rice. And finally, poached autumn fruits with quince syrup, and that's it.
Well, I've designed this banquet menu, but I could not have done it without the expert skills of Inoue-san and Koike-san.
I hadn't met these chefs before, and I don't mind saying I was pretty nervous, because chefs by nature hate strangers coming into their kitchen, blunting their knives, burning their pans, and generally getting in the way. And it's made worse by not speaking the language. They don't have handles on their saucepans here. This is the basic stock made with bonito flakes for the soups and dipping sauces.
The most important thing that I've learnt about Japanese cooking is the quality of the raw materials. And I've tried wherever possible to have the fish brought up from Cornwall, because I know the quality of my local fish. And so I'm just having a look through it, and I must say the first thing, this gurnard is in perfect condition, very nice, absolutely dead fresh, lovely smell about it, of course. And just having a look at this sea bass, I mean, you know, when you're cooking, if your raw materials are okay, everything falls into place. When I look at that bass with that lovely tag on it saying line caught wild bass from Cornwall, I just feel so reassured, and my sort of apprehension about cooking this banquet starting to fall away. And again, the lobsters and the spider crab, I mean, I wanted live spider crabs, and they are, because they'll taste that a little bit better. And I know that the Japanese members of this banquet tonight, probably the British too, let's not denigrate them, will probably taste that extra bit of freshness. And of course, the lobster's got to be alive when we start with it. Perfect, very reassured.
So for the sashimi and the tempura, I'm using brill and red mullet, a symbol of autumnal seafood because they're at their prime then. And to start the soup off, we're poaching shiitake mushrooms in the bonito stock. These are the young shoots of the ginger plant, and they've been blanched, cooled and dried quickly so they don't lose their crunch. Next, we've got to make the dipping sauce for the sashimi, and that starts with sake. Reduce sake with the alcohol burned off.
Really nice. The kelp aroma comes through very nicely.
Good, I'm pleased with that.
To add to that, I've chosen a fantastic bottle of soy sauce. This sauce I discovered in Kanazawa, and it's flavoured with konbu, or kelp as we know it. This is also flavoured with bonito flakes. They're just like wood shavings disappearing in a bowl of gravy.
very good mackerel we have today. We can't get this kind of quality that often, so this is very good quality.
Mr. Inoue, who's the head chef, has just complimented me on the quality of the mackerel, which makes me very happy. He said it's very hard for them to get mackerel as this quality in London, so it's really paid off bringing it up from Cornwall, because the mackerel is where it all started from.
Well, this is what I was doing wrong, apparently, on board that boat off Padstow. The Japanese coat their mackerel fillets in salt and then set them aside for a couple of hours to firm them up and take away any fishy odours. Then, before they're sliced up for sashimi, they're seasoned in a marinade made with mirin, sugar, water and konbu. A seaweed I'm getting to like very much indeed.
I've just had these sardines delivered. I was rather hoping to get some Mounts Bay sardines, because when the ambassador Nagami said about seasonality, my immediate thought was of a very nice night once when we were out fishing about this time of year in Mounts Bay, pulling up sardines with the same fisherman, with Stefan. So, you know, when I asked him to go out, that's what I was thinking, but unfortunately the weather's been appalling. Bless them, they still went out to try and catch some, but it was too rough, so they didn't get any. So these are from the Bay of Biscay. Just see what they're like. They smell all right. I'm just going to be a bit sort of red in tooth and claw here and just take a little bit of a piece off there. Hope you don't mind. Just put a bit of soy with them, really. It looks good. I'm sure these Japanese chefs will not approve of me doing this, but that's really good. They're lovely. They'll be fine. It's for the first course, and I was really hoping they'd be the Penzance ones, but it'll still be fine. It's the only Western dish in the whole banquet, the first course, incidentally.
This brill, I think, is up there with turbot and halibut, and it will be perfect in the sashimi because it's a really firm fish. And as for the gurnard, it's no longer thought of only as lobster bait. Now it's as sought after as red mullet or John Dory.
Well, the last course is going to be an autumnal fruit compote, and the centrepiece of that is going to be some quinces. Now, quince is quite an old-fashioned fruit. It's very hard to eat in its own right, but it makes a lovely syrup. Not only does it taste very nice and astringent, but it also has a deep sort of russet colour, and that clear stock, juice right over the top of my compote will make it really perfect.
I'm going to simmer these for for as long as it takes to get these bullet-hard fruits to soften and then break up with the potato masher. After all, I only want the juice and none of the pulp. I wonder whether or not this lovely fruit will be popular again.
Perfect.
Meanwhile, Inoue-san is expertly cutting up the bass into equal pieces ready for grilling. I could, after my visit to Japan, eat that raw.
Well, these are ceps, or porcini as the Italians call them. They don't use them in Japan. They use a mushroom, a really, really revered mushroom called matsutake, which are quite sort of similar in appearance and in price. So I just thought it would be very interesting to use our most revered mushroom and do it in a Japanese way. What I'm really keen on about porcini is just the look of them sliced like that. I think it has a sort of Japanese elegance about it. So what I'm hoping to do is to just to grill them along with the bass. I think they'll go very well indeed.
I could watch Inoue-san for hours. Every cut is done with one continuous action, no soaring back and forth. He's preparing the red mullet for the tempura.
This is the tempura dipping sauces, and I did write a recipe for it, but I was really keen to see the way they do it properly, because I got it out of a book. And actually it's 4 parts dashi and 1 part mirin, 1 part soy, and then a big handful of bonito flakes. So, you know, nice little tip, that.
And now for the first course and those sardines. I got the idea when I saw an old man on a beach in Corfu preparing anchovies with lemon and olive oil. But how to serve it in a Japanese way?
If I was doing this in my restaurant, I'd just probably put them on the plate like this. But I can't really see me doing that here because of the incredible delicacy of the way that the dishes are done here. So I'm just going to ask Inoue if he would just give me a few tips on how he thinks we should lay this out.
In Japan, we normally actually take the skin off with sardines. We actually do a lot of, I guess, slices on, or I guess, designs on it.
What, like a sort of
Like
diamond
the
pattern?
knife, yes.
Will you show? Will
ちょ
you
っと
show?
一回試していただいてよろしいですか?
Well, I'd never in a million years have thought of skinning a sardine fillet. This humble little sardine has started to resemble a very expensive watch strap. There seems no end to Inoue-san's skill. I wonder what he thinks of me.
Good Lord. I mean, it's perfect. I mean, that just says it all. I mean, that is the difference between Japanese and Cornish, I suppose. I mean, the amount of detail that's gone into that simple little sardine there, it says it all.
My spider crabs have been cooking away for 20 minutes, but I'll leave them to cool down before I can get at the meat. I'm really pleased to be able to do something with these, because most of what's caught off Cornwall gets shipped off to Spain. Meanwhile, Koike-san turns a single radish into half a dozen delightful little butterflies to garnish the sashimi. If it was left to me, they'd get them in a bowl with some sea salt to dip them in. I mean, this is the difference between us. Gastronomic origami. I've seen tomatoes turned into roses, which I detest, but this fine detail and precision is clearly meant to be a sign of respect for the ambassador and his guests, who incidentally will be turning up in a couple of hours' time. Well, I can't do that, but I've handled a couple of thousands of these in my time.
When I was in Japan, there's this bit just outside the Tsukiji market, which is a sort of market, a sort of retail market, if you like, outside Tsukiji called Jogai. I just noticed there was this really good fishmonger there selling crabs, and I sort of asked them through Taka, I mean, how much the crabs were selling for, because there were these lovely big Alaskan snow crabs there, and they're about £150 each. So I was thinking maybe there's something I could do with our local spider crabs, because they're not a crab that's much used in the UK, because they've got a lovely flavour. But the problem is, as you can see, you have to really work to get the meat out. There's this very, I thought, lovely dish in Japan called shawan mushti. Is that right, Taka?
Chawanmushi.
Chawanmushi, yeah. Which is like a little baked egg custard, and you put very delicate things in it, particularly some chicken breast, which it often seems to have. You make it with eggs. But the prime ingredient in that, in my dish, is going to be this these spider crab claws. I think that it'll work very well, but as I said, quite a lot of work.
I wish I could crack eggs like that. If it was me, they'd be all over the floor. This is the basis of the dish, beaten eggs. I had this for breakfast in Japan one morning, and it inspired me to put it on the menu. It's a very loose mix, roughly half eggs to a mixture of mirin, a sake-based sweetener, and dashi. And this has been seasoned with a touch of light soy sauce and salt.
It's very nice, very delicate, very nicely seasoned.
So to make up the little shawanmushi pots, first a ginkgo nut, they're really important in Japan, followed by chicken breast and chestnuts, a little seasonal reference there, and some sprigs of trefoil, practically unknown at home but very popular in Japan. And now for that lovely sweet crab meat.
The thing about Japanese food, I mean, once people are used to it, is the way people like to eat, because it's very healthy, very light, delicate. And I remember saying when we were doing the banquet, when we went to the banquet with ex-Prime Minister Mori, that really, it's like Michelin 3-star food, but it's the sort of food you want to eat. It's not too sort of calorific, and you sort of get up from the table thinking, yes, let's face life, let's have some fun.
And now the pots go into this handsome steamer. That looks a bit like a Japanese temple. For 20 minutes until the egg mixture loosely sets like a little custard. We're ready for the sashimi now, where only the prime cuts of the fish are served. And this is where Koike-san and Noe-san's knife skills come into their own. And I sit back and watch with wonderment, tinged with a dash of envy. So this is how mackerel sashimi is made. The salt and the marinade really firms it up. I don't know what the serious aficionados of Japanese food will think about this menu, but I'm really getting something from it. In just a relatively short space of time, I've learnt such a lot, and I'll use that in my restaurant back in Cornwall. But I'll keep the handles on the saucepans. And there goes that little butterfly to sit on the top. And what he's saying is, look at the amount of detail and care that's gone into this sashimi. What Inoue's done is just cook the lobster tails very quickly, about 2 minutes in boiling water, just so to set the lobster, and therefore you can take the shell off easily. And now he's just portioning them up for the tempura. I chose Cornish lobster in the tempura so everyone could get a taste of it. But back to the quince. I'm just now adding about half the volume of sugar to juice. And I'm just going to bring it to the boil, and it'll then start, all the impurities will rise to the surface. I'll skim them off. I'll be left with a nice clear syrup to poach the rest of my autumn fruit. Quite interesting because time's beginning to get a little bit tight here. I always think, well, we've only got, I can't remember how many it is to do tonight, no problem, but there's a lot of courses, and of course time waits for no man, so just having to go a little bit fast now. I thought I'd use a very English apple, the Cox, to poach in the quince syrup, and I got the idea of using persimmon from ex-Prime Minister Mori's banquet. It's a fruit that's becoming ever more popular here, and the Japanese really love it, and it looks so autumnal. The apples are done in a couple of minutes. It won't be long before the first guests start to arrive, and it's time to assemble the first course. Good. Tomato. Yeah. Perfect. Right.
Everything going all right?
Not too bad, Ambassador. We're just very impressed the way Inoue's cut them like that. We're just working out how they best will look in a Japanese way, you know. So we're just going to put a bit of olive oil on there and a tiny bit of Greek oregano. So it should be fine. First to arrive is a lady who taught me the fundamentals of Japanese etiquette. An essential requirement for anyone even thinking of going there. This is the miso soup, which is the last but one course. And he's using a dark miso paste, which is essentially a soya bean paste. But he's also cooked up the lobster heads. And I was just thinking, much as I wanted lobster in the tempura, there's so much flavour in the heads. Really, really happy that he's using the lobster heads to flavour the miso. It'll be really special. I'm looking forward to trying it, actually. One of the things that was a real, let's say, revelation in Japan with the use of pickles. I mean, I just love these pickles, particularly this burdock and the sour plums. Oh, and the cucumber. They're just sensational. This is going to come with the miso soup right at the end of the banquet, just before the sweet. And to me, it's a bit like the cheese course. I mean, I look forward to these pickles like I would look forward to some nice cheese. And in fact, tonight we're serving various very nice sakes, really seriously good ones, but also some wine. And with the miso, with the miso soup, I'm going to serve a Pinot Noir because I think it'll just go really well with these pickles. I love them. It's a good job us drones in the kitchen can't see what's going on upstairs. I'm a firm believer in getting the first course absolutely tippy-top, and then everything else will go like a dream. I'm also an optimist.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you very much, sir.
Terrible traffic, I'm afraid.
Oh, yes, it is.
Everywhere shut and it's raining.
Sorry.
Very nice to meet you.
Rick is working in the kitchen.
Who's working in the kitchen, Rick?
Rick Stein.
Oh, how wonderful. Well, that's a plus.
Sorry, but there's terrible traffic there. But
No, because
They say the Japanese are inscrutable, and now I know what it means. The bass is ready for grilling, and so might I be, I suspect, if this doesn't turn out as I would like.
well, thank you very much for coming tonight. Actually, the real host is not here. He's in downstairs.
superb.
I was told that you always serve soup as a second course because of its relaxing qualities. It's soothing and puts people at their ease. I'm down in the kitchen, remember, totally oblivious to all this. If I could have seen the guests enjoying it, I would have been much happier. They make the ice domes by putting water in a bowl, adding a second one and freezing it. They have a real wow quality that says this sashimi cannot be any fresher.
Is this an innovation of his, or is it always served in an igloo?
No. This is
a Rick Steinism.
Look at the butterfly. Isn't that gorgeous?
Course number 4, tempura, a popular choice for people just beginning to explore the delights of Japanese cuisine.
The skills shown here are far beyond me, I've got to admit it. I mean, there's no point in me trying to give them a hand, I'd just be in the way. But I did do the recipes, I did do the menu, and I'm very happy with the way it's turning out. I think what's really interesting about this is, first of all, these shiso leaves, you only batter them on the one side, so you've got the nice green in the finished tempura. But also, if you look at the batter there, you know, in recipes for tempura, they say don't mix it too much. There's flour on the rim of the batter, and there's really bits of totally unmixed flour in it. But that's how you get this lovely light crispness in the finished tempura. Oh, God. Well, this is a really important part of the banquet to me. So I love tempura, and I just wanted to see it done perfectly. And I had the idea of what to go in it. I wanted some Cornish lobster. I wanted some chanterelle seasonal. But I mean, to me, it's a bit like sort of designing a house and then getting somebody to build it. The way they work, the last-minuteness of this tempura, which is the only way to do it, is absolutely spectacular.
The dipping sauce is really important for tempura. Before I embarked on this banquet and went to Japan, I thought it was just soy sauce and not that complex mixture of mirin, bonito and seaweed. It makes all the difference.
This is the dish we learned from the Portuguese. But the Portuguese were so enthusiastic.
The fellow was extremely.
Course number 5 is the shawan mushi, with the crab meat topped off with a warm, delicate sauce made with dashi and just a touch of grated ginger. This whole banquet is a voyage of discovery for me. Nowhere, I think I'm right in saying, have we anything like this in our food. A savoury, steamed egg custard. I had absolutely no idea that people were wolfing it down like no tomorrow. All my hopes are pinned on this course. It's the grilled porcini and sea bass. I've never tried grilling porcini this way. What a time to try it out. But I'm certain from what the ambassador said that he's a stickler for seasonality, and porcini it's got to be.
I'm very happy with this. The great mistake is because this is probably the star dish, the sea bass, it's a great mistake to give them too much. That's why we've only got one small piece, one piece of sep, and a little bit of garnish there. People will really appreciate that.
The ambassador's guests include the boss of an airline, diplomats, bankers, journalists, some old hotelier friends of mine from Cornwall, all people who know a lot about cooking. It occurred to me that food is one of the ambassador's greatest tools in forging an understanding and creating friendships all over the world. But I suspect Mr. Nakami knows that already. Now for this all-important miso soup. This has been flavoured with lobster and seaweed, and it has tofu added to it at the last minute. And this is traditionally served with pickles and steamed rice. It signifies really the end of a meal, and if a waiter says to you in a Japanese restaurant, "Can I serve the rice now?" you know it's the end of the meal. But on this occasion, we've still got dessert to come. For us cooks, we can start to relax now. We still don't know how it's gone down, but there's an air of buoyancy about the place, and there's not much to dislike about the autumn fruits. So I'd say we're home and dry, and I think the pudding wine, after all the sake, will go really well with the fruit.
It was down to these boys, I have to say. Thank you very much. Wonderful, wonderful.
Rick, please.
Oh, thank you. Great.
Great.
Here?
You know how to put it? You've done it.
Oh, good.
You've done
My
it.
God, we've done it.
My God, you've done it.
They're terribly good, your chefs. My gosh, I would not have, honestly.
Did you give them a job in Padstow?
Oh, tomorrow? Yesterday?
No, don't do that.
No. It's only a joke. It's only a joke.
We loved it.
Well, I've loved doing it. It's been such pleasure. I was a bit nerve-wracking. I was a bit on edge this morning, I have to say, but as the day progressed, and I realised how good they were and how safe, in what safe hands I was. And the whole thing has been I've learned so much today that it's been a fantastic experience for me, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It was excellent. Let's
cheers.
Let's drink it.
Oh, good. We got some. Well,
The Culture Show's here on BBC HD tomorrow at 7, and coming up tonight, Junior Apprentice heads to Holland at 9, after Springwatch next.